The finish yesterday at the U.S. Open had as much drama as you could ever imagine. You had Bryson DeChambeau, who for a while there, everyone thought he was like Mr. Evil, and left for live and all that stuff, a reincarnation of who he is, his personality, and Rory McIlroy, who basically tried to carry the PGA Tour on his back, and maybe some of that pressure caught up with him at the end. Shane Ryan wrote a fantastic column last night, U.S. Open 24, Rory McIlroy, and the newest shade of heartbreak. Shane, he obviously was devastated. There's even comments about whether or not he should have stayed around. Should he have hugged Bryson DeChambeau, shook his hand, done media, whatever else? Has anyone heard from him today? Do you know?
Yeah, I just read a statement he put out that basically, said what you'd expected to say. Congratulations to Bryson. This is very painful for me, but I remain convinced that I'm really close to winning a major. And a little bit more, but that's the gist of it. So he did break his silence at some point. I don't think it was too long ago.
So let me ask you this. You've seen a lot of golf. You've seen collapses. I thought of John Van de Velde, Scott Hoke. Phil Mickelson, of course, has had some late round disasters. Where does this one, in your opinion, rank?
In terms of the collapse, it's so tough to analyze it because he played a really great round until the 15th hole. He started off the day behind Bryson. He actually ended with a better score than Bryson. He was making putts, which was something he couldn't do when he lost at LA Country Club, when he lost at the old course at St. Andrews. So you have this great stretch, and then you have the last four holes, which were a nightmare, and included two really, really short misses, including one on 16 that I still can't quite wrap my mind around. So, it's a bad late collapse, but then you put it in the context of how long we've been waiting for Rory to win his next major, how it's a huge storyline every single time he gets in contention, how he's kind of found various ways to lose it. But, those ways are all like, well, he was in contention, then he had a bad Saturday, or he made a late run on Sunday, but it was too late. It's never quite like this. This was the most pronounced and most devastating, I'm sure, where basically it seemed like if he didn't have it locked up, it was close to locked up around the 14th hole. He had a two-shot lead. DeChambeau was all over the place. Really, he should have won it, right? If he had just played even par or even +1, he would have won. So when you factor all that in, this is about as painful as it gets, I think, at least in my memory.
Do you feel like he can come back from this? He's got the swing. We know he still hits the ball, driver better than anybody. He had a couple of things go. There was a couple of bad luck. A lot of guys did because of the native grass, et cetera. Do you feel like he comes back from this, or does he go back into a shell even further?
I think so. I think he's resilient. I mean, if there's one thing the guy's proven over and over again, he keeps coming back for more. And, this is the most painful loss. And he even said that in his statement, probably his most painful day in 17 years of playing. But he should have won at the old course. He's had some painful moments before, and he hasn't quit. And it's hard to say, right? We can't look inside the guy's head if this is going to psychologically break him or what. I suspect he'll be back, and I suspect he will, if not win a major, I think he's going to be competitive again. Maybe as soon as true, maybe as soon as a month from now. So I don't think it breaks him, but I don't know. You don't know. Some things may be too much of a load to carry, and you never kind of know when that's the case for somebody else.
So how long did you were taking notes along the way like anyone would? It's covering the event. Sometimes it might be more scores if you're dictating the game. But you did an incredible job. And I mean this, kind of like in a diary form of what was going on. And how long after the tournament ended did you get a chance to finish your story and post it?
So, yeah, that's a good question. I think So I followed him down, into the champion scoring, into the locker room. He left pretty quickly, so that all happened within, call it 10 minutes or something like that. At that point, it probably took me an hour and a half, 2 hours to write the story, and then then you send it in and have a few edits or whatever, and then it goes up. So it was a really quick turnaround. But what I would say is like the emotion of that moment is so strong for everybody. Strongest for Rory, of course, but you can't help but feel it if you're a fan or a writer. So it was I was just sort of lucky that a structure kind of occurred to me as I was writing. But other than that, it was an easy write because it was all like fresh in mind, and you're kind of feeling inspired is the wrong word, but you're definitely feeling kind of carried along by the pain of what you just witnessed.
I want to get into the yellow flower lantana because I love that. I love that plant or flower, whatever it might be, in that analogy that you started out your story with. But let's also, a lot of it, of course, has been focused on Rory, the collapse. He disappeared. He left. He screeched his tires or not, whatever. And it's good that he put out a statement. Those who don't like him are going to say it's too late, and those who like him are going to say, yeah, you probably still stood a stayed, but thanks for the statement. Bryson DeChambeau, a year or two or three ago, was thought of as a villain. Part of the Liv, of course, departure. Got all muscled up, and some people just thought he was Popeye. He was good. What has changed in him, Shane, is this seems to have been like, I don't know how much. Maybe George Foreman as a boxer went from the evil guy to the lovable George Foreman. His transformation. How long has this been in the process?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So it must have been 2021. Yeah, I think 2021. He was in the final round at Memphis with Eric English, and he had a chance to win, and he didn't. But that was right around the time when Brooks Koepka kind of sicked all his frat boys on him. Everybody's yelling, calling him Brooksy. Everybody's kind of mocking him. And I remember walking with him that day in Memphis, and it was the most brutal golf crowd I've ever seen outside of a Ryder Cup. And of course, a Ryder Cup, you're partisan, so that's a little bit different. This was supposed to be a neutral venue, and from hole to hole, he was getting mocked ruthlessly, and it really affected him. You could see he was miserable by the end of the round. And so the only little bone to pick I would have with your characterization, I didn't quite think of him as a villain. I thought of him as sort of, people considered him annoying. People considered him obnoxious. They didn't like him. He was unliked, but he wasn't like, the bad guy. It was more just like, we despise this guy kind of thing. And so anyway, you're right. Then he's one of the first guys to go to Liv. Then I think he had a lot go wrong. And, his dad passed, and I think he had some, he had his mental battles. He was talking about that yesterday. And I think whether or not he had some perspective or just a lot of really good coaching, that kind of rebrand started there. He started making his own content on YouTube, gave him the ability to speak to people directly and kind of establish a fan base. I think he interacted with people more. I think he figured some things out about how to deal with other human beings, basically. And the time away at Liv, which essentially is like being invisible in the golf world, right? Because they haven't gotten a huge fan base or anything like that. So all of a sudden, you're absent for most of the time. People aren't seeing you week to week. They have time to forget what they didn't like about you. And when they do see you, it's at majors and you're playing great, right? So we saw at the PGA, he comes close to winning. Everybody's kind of cheering for him. His game has always been incredibly exciting. So he's got this energy behind him now. People are starting to like him, and he seems like a different guy. And now he goes in and he wins the U.S. Open, and you get just about everything right, not only on the course, but from a PR perspective. And he had that great moment with Johnson Wagner last night. So, yeah, it's a complete turnaround, been, I would say, 2 to 3 years in the making. And, again, whether he's a changed man, we don't know. But he's certainly figured some things out in terms of how to deal with people and to sort of present himself when you're mega famous like that.
When did you know Rory might be starting to feel the collar? I hate to use the word choke, but I've seen that, or he gagged or whatever. I can't make a 2-foot putt with no money on the line. And there have been times, but that's not my job. I feel comfortable starting the show and being a part of a show. But was there a sign? Because Bryson missed a short putt too. And so, I mean, it's a chance to lock this thing up. Was there any sign, in your opinion, this was about to happen?
Yeah, it's like if if you're like, all I have to do is close my show for 30 seconds and you somehow commit an SEC violation. Right? That would be the equivalent. That would be the equivalent of missing a 2-foot putt. No, I think. Yeah, it's funny because he goes on this hot stretch of 9 to 13. I followed him for the first 7 holes. He did well. He had a couple bad breaks. Came into the media center, had some lunch. While I was gone, he made a ton of birdies. I caught up with him again on 14. And, as I tell us, I realized I was with him for all the bad stuff. Maybe it was my fault. He lost. But, no, I got back on 14. He pulled that drive to the left, but he made par. It's just always hard to say, isn't it? Because it's a hard course. So you can't just say, oh, wow, he had to scramble for par. That's not choking. Pinehurst is really tough. The shot on 15, the par 3, was quite bad. That you can kind of see, okay, now he's having trouble. But then he comes on 16 and he hits 2 great shots. He gets a really good putt, and he's 2 feet away from par. And that's not a choke. And then he choke, right? Then it becomes that miss that is just you scratch your head, and then you start thinking, oh, well, he's doomed now. But then what happens? 17, he hits a bad shot off the tee, and you start to think more and more he's doomed, but he makes a terrific up and down. Then he gets to 18, pulls his drive. Okay, now he's choking, but he hits it out, and then he makes a great chip to give himself a chance for par under pressure. Those are not easy shots. But then he misses another putt. So you see what I mean? It goes back and forth where you kind of try to analyze, did he choke, did he not? It really comes down to those two putts. And if he had made those, we'd be saying, boy, he scrambled and played pretty well under pressure. And then by the same token, DeChambeau is all over the place too. It's not like he's lighting it up. He can't put a drive in play. It really was kind of a war of attrition at the end when you get that kind of pressure on. But I did think after he missed the putt on 16, it becomes incredibly difficult to win that golf tournament and to basically put that out of mind, because what an awful blunder, really.
It's a what-if game, and we do this in sports. We do this with anything. If McIlroy makes the putt from, 2-3 feet for par, he hit that way too hard and also a pretty quick. And you could almost see him panic after he hit it. If he makes that, does he win by 3?
Yeah, it's really possible. I mean, right? Because then you think maybe he's a little more calm for the next tee shot. There's so much that, I think Michael Kay, the Yankees announcer, calls this the fallacy of the predetermined outcome, where we try to kind of predict based on things that didn't happen. But I'll give you another one. What if just on 18 he makes the par putt?
Yeah.
Right? And then you say, well, then DeChambeau makes par and they go to a playoff. Well, does he? Right? Because there's a whole lot more pressure on DeChambeau when you have to make par. Because don't forget, if DeChambeau had blown that putt, he still gets to be in a playoff. So there's a certain amount of comfort when you're hitting that bunker shot saying, well, I'd love to go up and down and win, but I don't have to, but I can, really feel confident. But if you have to go up and down, maybe he doesn't do it. You could go on and on with this stuff, but yeah, I think if he makes that putt, he is certainly in control, only up a shot, but really, really in control and potentially cruising in for a win.
Try to explain, and we have guys in the chat that play golf, and some play at a very high level, some play on beautiful golf courses, but this has always been the case. Even I remember when I first started, I'm a 6 handicap, and I'm okay, but not the level of anything that anyone would want. The hardest shot in golf is what?
That's a good question.
Is it the 55 or 60-yard sand bunker that you have to carry onto the green?
Yeah, that's got to be up there. I mean, really. I'm a worse golfer than you, and I have a lot of trouble from the sand. So I would say so. Yeah, the short chip under pressure. There's a lot. You go to a lot.
Yeah.
But point being, I don't think there's an easy shot in golf when you're really feeling under the gun. Whether you're a 15 handicap or you're playing for the U.S. Open, everybody feels pressure, at some level. They're all tough, but certainly that shot Bryson did was unbelievable.
All right, so let's go back to what you saw. Explain to everybody the story about the yellow flower that you saw. I think it was you were at the 16th green, Lantana Camara, the species of Verbenus. What's the story behind that?
Well, it's just one of those funny things where it was right before Rory took that putt, that really short putt that, you never thought in a million years he could miss. And the concept is you're sitting there, if you're a writer, if you're watching it, you're thinking, okay, we got some really dramatic things about to happen. Rory's tee shot on 17 is going to be dramatic. Bryson has to hit his approach into 16. There's big moments to come, and they're going to be full of all this drama. And you don't think that the drama is going to happen right now, which is, what happened when he missed that putt. So you're kind of in this moment, and you're thinking, you're looking around. There's Joe LaCava standing on a hill. You're noticing things. The drone is a blimp above you. And then I just happened to notice this flower, which I'm sure I've seen it before in my life, but it didn't seem like I had. I didn't remember it if I had. It looked strange. So I'm a big plant guy. So I went and took a picture of it with my app. And yeah, you read the species it was, and I had never heard of that before. And I was just kind of looking at that, and I looked up, and Rory missed the putt. It's like, and the thing is, from now on and for the rest of my life, that flower, anytime I see it or anytime I think about it, that is now permanently tied as an association with Rory McIlroy.
Yeah,
and it was just one of those. It's just kind of an interesting way I thought to start the article, because we're in the aftermath when you're trying to make sense of it. Part of it is going, well, how does he feel about it, right? How does Rory feel about it? How's he gonna get through this night? What's he gonna feel when he wakes up in the morning? You just don't know, because he's got his own associations, and we all have our own. Some people might have watched this somewhere. Well, I'll never forget where I was when I saw Rory blow the U.S. Open, all that stuff. And so it's personal to each one of us. For me, it's what does it mean? Well, it means Lantana Camara or whatever it is, yellow sage, red sage. And so that kind of was the impetus behind that.
Do you feel like, I didn't read a statement, you mentioned Rory's statement. Do you feel like he regrets leaving the way he did?
Yeah, I hope so. I think, to me, the media is one aspect of it, not talking to the media. I can give him a pass on that because of the intensity of the pain, while also saying, well, Greg Norman had intense pain too. John Vandervelde had intense pain. Scott Hoke did. They all talked to the media, right? So you think like you would wish in that moment he would kind of rise above a little bit, but at the same time, it's easy to say that when you're not the one experiencing this agony. The one thing I do feel more confident in saying, or more, more, more intent that he did the wrong thing in this case was I think you have to take a moment to congratulate Bryson, even if it's just the briefest of handshakes. It's just one of those deals, one of those rituals that I think is so important in sports and shows a lot of integrity and strength to be able to do that even when you're suffering, to go congratulate the winner, even if you don't like the winner, even if, it's really hard in that moment. I think you have to do it. And I think, Rory talked in his statement today about how resilient he is. Well, I think there's a certain part of resilience in that moment where we have to suck it up and go say, nice job. It takes 2 seconds, but it's a really meaningful gesture, I think.
Have you ever seen a golfer enjoy the moment as much as Bryson did after winning? And I don't know if you saw, I'm sure you did, but was it Johnson Wagner in the bunker? He stops off and does that. That was great live TV. I mean, that was amazing. And it was just, have you ever seen somebody just soak it in for that long like he did last night?
No, it was great. It was great. And, I missed a lot of it last night because I was grinding away on the Rory stuff. So a lot of it I enjoyed this morning. And, I saw it, of course, going around online, the Wagner clip, but I never really watched it. And then, I watched it today. Just amazing. It's just really a fantastic moment of live TV there. And in general, he took the trophy, he was doing high fives, and I think that's cool. I think the path he's come on, I think it's cool to enjoy it like that. And I really appreciated seeing that. A lot of what I missed last night, it was really neat to see it today.
All right, if you don't mind, Shane Ryan again with this Golf Digest on 365 Sports. Do you feel like in any way at all him winning? Because we know about LIV and the PGA Tour, but there is the thought that this thing is getting closer to whatever it's going to be. It's not going to be kiss and make up. Do you feel like Bryson being right now that star, Scheffler, of course, #1 ranked, Rory's right there, do you feel like in any way that can help, or is it just so much down to dollars and cents that doesn't matter?
I just don't think it matters. I think there's they said the same thing about Brooks last year. And you could argue, sure, like Bryson's a bigger star than Brooks, or he's kind of got more of an appeal right now than Brooks maybe had. But I think it's so business oriented. And the other thing is that I think last year proved that, having a LIV player win a major isn't really going to do much for LIV, right? In terms of people watching. And so it's not like it's not a leverage point. It's not really any kind of negotiating piece or anything like that. So I don't think there's much you can do. It's just I guess maybe the overall psychology of it, maybe in some subtle way, it pushes people to think, God, we need to get these guys back together. But the other funny thing is just like, you talk with normal people, they're just fine watching the majors, right? They're not really concerned with what's happening. Yeah, we'll watch them in the U.S. Open, we'll watch them at the British Open, then we'll watch football, right? For 6 months. It's okay. So I don't think necessarily this practically in any tangible way kind of does anything to speed this, to hasten that at all.
What went wrong was, in my last question, and we appreciate it, Shane, it's a great story. I sat there and watched that. I think I told you in an email, I had goosebumps because I could feel it, because it's like I was watching that, but just not from as close as you were. What went wrong with Scottie Scheffler? It seemed like he was off with his efficiency. He's so laser sharp with his irons, and early on it just didn't seem like he had that. Yeah,
it was like something, I think he had, if you count the Memorial, he had something like 4 rounds over par in a row. And this is a guy who, hadn't been above 70 for the longest time this year. Just off a little bit. I think it's very forgivable, I think. The guy has just been unbelievable all year. But something about it. And it was a little puzzling just because it felt like when you have a degree of difficulty like Pinehurst #2, this is going to play right into his hands because he's not only really pinpoint with all his irons and a great accurate driver and all that, but has a great caddy and a very good tactical mind in terms of how to attack the course. So you felt like this, it's just shaping up to be a great major for Scheffler. But it just wasn't sharp. And I think what you can look at too is he has really improved his putting to the point that in most weeks, if he just has an average putting week, right, if he's just in the middle of the pack in the field, he's going to have a chance to win the tournament. However, Pinehurst is a different beast when it comes to putting, and I think probably that worked against him a little bit too.
Can you try? I'm bad about this. How do you describe the greens? I know I've been to Augusta. I've been fortunate. It looks like elephants have been buried in some of the fronts of the greens or whatever. Is it literally like trying to hit a golf ball on the front of a hood of a car at Pinehurst?
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of colloquial way to put it. What do they call them? Like the turtleback greens that you design. They're tough. And it's deceptive because these are big greens in a lot of cases. But one term that came about this week that I thought was a really helpful way to look at it is they talked about effective landing area in terms of where you can actually land it and the ball will stay on the green, right? Because you can land it on the green, but a lot of times that's going to just roll off. And when you talk about effective landing area, you're talking about, in some cases, half of the actual green. And so they end up being effectively, again, to use that word, they end up being effectively really small greens. So, yeah, and the fact that they have these sort of turtleback shapes makes it just really, really tough.
Man, great stuff. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much. It's Shane Ryan on Twitter at Shane Ryan here, HERE. It's just fantastic, the articles that he's written and the coverage of golf. We appreciate your time. You got a book out, right? Is that the Cup They Couldn't Lose? Is that your book?
Yeah, if you like the Ryder Cup, the Cup They Couldn't Lose, you can check that out. And, like you said, on Golf Digest. But, yeah, really, thanks. It's really nice talking to you. And
you too.
It's cool to talk to somebody who knows a lot about golf. So this was really fun.
Thank you, Shane. Have a great day. And after a long, long weekend at Pinehurst with the win for Bryson DeChambeau, and I never found myself, rooting against him because of anything. There's a couple of guys on LIV that I would rather not see win. Like Hatton, to me, is funny. He's a LIV guy. I thought it was just amazing drama in golf, that it's hard to win, and it's hard to win a U.S. Open. And under those, you're talking about a guy that got in a Lear, whatever you call it, was it a G5, whatever they call it, 15, got in his Lear, makes all this money, lives in South Florida. His marriage is in better shape because he and his wife decided to stay together. All of this, great golfer, and yet he is like this big when he missed that putt on 16 and then 18. And he walked away. I didn't like it. I think you got to stay there. Doesn't mean you have to talk to the media, but I think if anything, you need to be there to shake Bryson's hand at the end.